Now that we've covered some reasons why we need to teach literacy to students with significant disabilities, let's talk about how to teach literacy, specifically written expression. I think we've established that the need for meaningful experiences to facilitate literacy comprehension. Meaningful experiences also require a social communication component. Let's talk about that social piece a bit more to help us understand more about how teaching written expression for our most challenging students. Again, let's make sure we're on the same page with our definitions. Social, needing companionship, relating to or designed for activities in which people meet each other for pleasure. Communication means the connection between people or places in particular. The means of sending or receiving information. The successful conveying of sharing of ideas and feelings. I hope you can see the connection between the social communication piece and that they require at least two people coming together, because the information has to have a sender and a receiver, which is usually an enjoyable process. According to McDowell and Copeland's work, meaning is based on shared experiences. They state, for example, field trips or class projects create instructional opportunities that are meaningful to students and increase their participation in classroom and school. Are you seeing an overlap here? To have meaningful literacy, we need to have shared experiences, which we can only do with someone else. And then we have to be able to send and receive messages about that experience. In Downing's work, she states there is an integral relationship between communication interactions and literacy learning. Downing also reminds us that the literacy experiences can be recalled, discussed, and even written about. In education, we focus heavily on the communication for kids with significant disabilities. However, often for many of these students, even if there is an established form of communication, it often requires a partner to be immediately present, and written expression is often overlooked as even an option. We need to recognize that written expression is just another form of communication. In Soto and Zangari's book, Practically Speaking, Foley, Copenhaver, and Williams state, writing is a learned process and used most effectively within meaningful and motivating contexts. Are you seeing any connections yet? Up here in this green oval, the social context of communication with someone who communicates in a mode the student can understand. Let's look at the red triangle now. Gives meaning to the shared experiences. The meaningful shared experiences can be recalled, discussed, and written, increasing the social communication experience, which in turn makes literacy a function of experience rather than development, which in turn increases communication between the student and a partner, making this a very cyclical process of experiences with an ever-expanding literacy and learning for a single student with severe and multiple disabilities. Wow. I hope you are beginning to see the mosaic connection and the overlap here. Cohen, Allgood, Heller, and Castile discuss the social implications that having communication in a written form can increase the student's participation in school, community, and vocational settings. Downing tells us, literacy is not a passive undertaking of being read to. Literacy learning requires meaningful interactions, which is an active process, using literacy materials for reading and writing. And they must be interactive and even entertaining. Browder and colleagues tell us the ability to create written language is important for all students because it opens another important avenue for communication. Social interaction and written language are important avenues for communication. Are you drawing some connections yet? I hope you're seeing that written expression is a form of communication which leads to increased social interactions in the community, which in turn increases the opportunity for more social interactions and thus more meaningful literacy experiences, which then can lead to more opportunities for written expression and communication. Voila, it's like magic. Let's take a look at another young friend, another Jake. This Jake has no formal communication system. When he started a program for writing with alternative pencils, Jake began experiencing writing with an alternative pencil in the spring of 2004. By July 2004, less than 6 months, Jake was writing with a flip chart. Jake could indicate which letters his partner should write for him. Jake used his arm to access the mover switch, which lit a green light indicating what the partner should move to the next letter, and when the partner got to the desired letter, Jake used his knee to access a picker switch which would light up red, which indicated to his partner that that's the letter he wanted to write. For this section of the video, if you want the full in-depth version, unfortunately I don't have permission to download the video itself, but you can link to it through my Assistive Technology Helpful Hints link, and then scroll down to Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, which should then take you to this web page, Resources, Deafblind Model Classroom Resources, Deafblind Case Studies, Jake's Story. Now, on Jake's story, it goes into great depth about a 15-year-old boy who had really no formal communication skills, and in the late spring of 2004, they began using a flip chart to communicate. In this flip chart, it had words. It was at a word level. So it had words like want, play, like, and not. Okay, so if you want to go through and watch this video, it is fascinating, and I encourage you to do so. As you scroll down, you'll see his progress that they have documented over time. By the summer of 2004, he was using 2 switches to communicate. This was his first time using a 2-switch scanning system. Hollering for dad. So this was a process of learning how to navigate to get 2 switches to do what he wanted it to do. Then a little bit later, July 2004, using an alphabet flip chart for writing. And as you read the description on this web page, it discusses how he activates one switch to tell the support person whether to go to another letter or to write that letter down. Not that one. That one? Okay. So as he goes on, he will write letters, and you can see them described more clearly down in this part, his journal entries and what it is he was writing and the process that they went through to work on written expression for him and how he began to develop into words. As you can see, some of his first experiences were just practicing writing letters, a lot like preschoolers do. Probably the ones that were most familiar to him. If you look in paragraph 7 on that web page, the topic was going to movies, and he wrote a whole bunch of A's and B's and a C and E and F's, and he just went on. As he continued with meaningful literacy experiences and social interactions with feedback about his writing, in 1.5 years later, he was writing a simple word, dad, and putting spaces between letters in a word-like format. Now, that might sound like a long time to be able to write just a few words, but you have to remember he had no formal communication when he started using the alternative pencil. Now let's think about how long does it take a normal child to learn to write from the time they start talking? So most kids start talking about the age of 1, and they begin to write their name around the age of 4. So it takes about most children 3 years. Jake did it in half that time. He was able to do this in part because of the social communication interactions and experiences that he had before he had a formal communication system, and then continued to develop that with his partners as he learned to write. To summarize the social communication, I want to reiterate Erickson, Hatch, and Clendon's work. Literacy is a function of experience rather than development. And what have we said about experiences? Experiences give opportunities for communication and give a meaning to literacy, right? So literacy is a function of experience rather than development. There is no developmental readiness for literacy. This is the basis for the decisions we make in education. And I need you to understand that the literature tells us we need to plunge ahead. We don't wait for the student to get ready. Now, I want you to take about 5 minutes and reflect on your own situation. You should have been able to download It's an All About Me form. On it, there is a section for receptive and expressive language. If you want to take about 5 minutes, think about your student that you're working with and jot down what you know is currently being used. Use the questions on the directions to guide your thoughts and to help that brainstorming process.